Hi, it's Dawn from Dawn's Dirt. Dirt can mean gardening, dirt can mean soil, dirt can mean animals. Like I was just chasing my chickens out through the backyard. They all got out. Dirt can mean politics, dirt can mean religion, dirt can mean anything we want it to mean. And so welcome to the show today, Rebecca. And so thankful to have you here. And you are an avid gardener in the city of Toronto.
That's right. I've been gardening here for the last 3 years in the space I'm at. So this is my third year working the soil here in this
I
house.
love it. I love it. Why did you choose to get into gardening? Because you're not that old. So what made you decide that you want to grow a garden in your backyard?
Well, that's a really good question. And when I reflect on that, I would say it's likely because of my childhood growing up. My grandfather, he had a garden. So it was a humongous garden next to his house. They grew everything from corn, sunflowers to blueberries, and they even had some goats at one point. So that was my favorite thing to do as a kid, was to go to my grandpa's farm and just like eat the blueberries and eat the beans out of the garden. So that's likely why. And then I've just always had a passion for growing plants, and food seems like the most practical thing to grow.
Absolutely, absolutely. So do you save money on your grocery bill? Because you're growing food in your backyard. Do you save a little money in the summertime on your grocery bill?
I would say I probably do. We do have a lot of shade in our backyard, so there is some limit to how big the plants grow. And I find, like, honestly, the farmer's market for $4, you get like a huge thing of Swiss chard, all organic. You get a big thing of lettuce. Here in my garden, I maybe have like 8 heads of lettuce. And last night we just cut one off and I made a salad out of it. So, like, I would say I save a little bit of money on groceries.
Last night you saved $4.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's the point. That's the point to growing a garden is you can save a little bit of money on your grocery bill. And how special, like how much better. I know the farmer's market produce is good because I used to sell all my vegetables at farmer's markets, but how good was that salad last night that you grew yourself?
Amazing. Like, there's nothing better than eating the food out of your own garden. Every morning I'll pick some green leaves, maybe some basil. Like this morning I picked some basil, some arugula, and threw it in my scrambled eggs. Just little things like that make it so worth it.
Yeah, amazing. And the lettuce and arugula and basil and things that you pick out of your backyard, how's the flavor compared to something you'd buy in the grocery store?
It's a lot sweeter, I would say. It's got a
Yep,
lot more sweetness to
absolutely.
it. Yeah.
For sure. So, what's been the biggest challenge growing a garden in your backyard?
For me, in this location, the biggest challenge has been the shade and positioning plants in a way where they'll grow optimally. So finding the most sunny spots and putting my tomatoes there, um, and figuring out which plants are good in the shade. So this year I bought Malabar spinach, I believe it's called, because I learned that this type of spinach is really, really good for growing in the shade. So that's been
For
doing
sure.
really well. Do you know
Nice.
about
Yeah.
Malabar spinach?
I don't know about Malabar spinach, but I know about spinach. I know about cold weather crops. So cold weather crops are your lettuces, your spinach, your arugula, your um Swiss chard, anything leafy green. Basil likes a lot of the sun. Some of the herbs are a little different, but your lettuces, like your leafy greens, your kale, peas are a cold weather crop. Sometimes your brassicas, so your cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, things like that. Those are cool weather crops, and so those crops actually don't mind a little less shade, and especially during the summertime when you're getting plus 30 or I don't know what your high temperatures are in Toronto sometimes, but like here on the prairie berries, like we can get some pretty hot days. And those cold weather crops do better in some shadier spots because then they can stay a little cooler. Even in my lettuce house that I had. So I called it my hippie house. I took the half the roof off my pig barn and I, put lettuce in there, but it got so hot in there that I actually had to put up a curtain, like a piece of like shade curtain, and shade my lettuce that was in there because it was just too hot. And lettuce that's hot bolts right away. So if you don't know what bolting is, it's where your greens grow up and they go to flower right away. So have you had that with your spinach or anything like that where it, grows up and then it bolts right away?
I had that with my cilantro. So my cilantro went to flower like really, really quick.
For sure. And that makes sense. And those are herbs, so they're finer little plants anyway. And so yeah, they'll bolt up. And you can eat bolted spinach sometimes, but you have to do a little taste test. Like, you have to taste it. We used to do that on my farm. So the guys would taste it first and then they go, okay, it tastes okay. And then they'd still pick it and we'd sell it at market. So you've got a lot of shade. So you grow your cold weather crops. How do your sunnier crops do? Like your tomatoes and your beans and things like that?
My bush beans were actually doing quite well. I was already picking some beans from the bush beans there. The pole beans haven't quite gone to fruit, but they are flowering. So the rabbits actually ate off my bush beans, which is unfortunate.
You have a problem with rabbits and I have a problem with chickens. We got something very in common here. Do you remember the toilet paper wars of 2020? Are you worried about being prepared in an emergency? Are you tired of being a slave to the corporations we purchase from? It's time to take control. Become ungovernable. Take your food system into your own hands. Hi, I'm Dawn, a coach dedicated to helping you live like grandma used to. Self-reliant, resourceful, and prepared. Whether it's raising chickens, growing a garden, canning your own food, or even milking a cow, I'll teach you how to thrive and survive in the space you have, big or small. We can even potentially make some money off your homestead. Visit Dawn's Dirt today to book your free jumpstart call. Together, as a team, we can get you self-reliant and ungovernable. We, the people, have the power to take back control. Remember, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. But if you teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Let's build a better future and a community, one skill set at a time.
Yeah, so it's really frustrating. You get so excited that you're going to have some beans, and then all of a sudden you go back there and the rabbits ate them all off. But the tomatoes, at first I thought, oh my God, my tomatoes are doing amazing. They're stocky, tall, strong looking. But I noticed that there aren't very many flowers on my tomatoes. So I do have some flowers for sure, just very far and few between.
Yeah, so I think I know why, or part of the reason why. So you've got nice, tall, big, beautiful tomatoes and not a lot of flowers. And do the leaves look really strong and healthy and it's big and it's bushy?
Yes, I have been trimming some of the bottom leaves off.
Okay. So I would take a few more leaves off the bottom and just be slightly more aggressive with it. And I think that would probably help. I also wonder if it's because of the shade. See, to get something to fruit, it needs so many hours of daylight, so many hours of nighttime, and it has to have a temperature drop. So when I had my greenhouse, I dropped the temperature at night and then it warmed up during the day. And so have you been having a lot of warm nights as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably part of it as well, that it's just not it's in vegetative state. It's not necessarily in survival mode, where it wants to produce seed, which is your fruit. And so that's probably part of it. Just keep going with it. Take a few more leaves off, stress it out a little more, and you might get some tomatoes. Have you ever seen that tomato plant where it's like, super spindly and, super ugly, but you've got red tomatoes on it? Have you ever seen a plant like that before?
Yeah, I've seen that like on a balcony. I remember seeing something
Yes.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely. So that's what's going on is when you have an ugly looking plant, but it's got red tomatoes, that plant is so stressed out. All it wants to do is reproduce, and reproducing means it's going to give you red tomatoes, which is, fantastic. And that's what you want is you want the fruit. And even in my greenhouse, I used to keep my plants stressed out all the time. So they were, I only kept 15 leaves per plant on my tomato plants. Isn't that crazy?
Wow. So where do you stop cutting the leaves off at the bottom? So I'm just wondering what your advice is on where you should stop.
Great question. So I never stopped. So when I grew my tomatoes, they weren't the bush varieties. So my guess is you have more of a bush variety, but I had indeterminate tomatoes. So and you can prune indeterminate or determinate tomatoes the same way. So I grew one stalk directly up a string, and as it went up, it only had one grow point, and I took 100% of the shoots that was on that grow point. So I took 100% of this shoot or 100% of the suckers out, and I only kept leaves. And then as the grow point, the very top of the plant, and then as it grew up, branches of flowers came off of that, right? And they would pollinate and they would get tomatoes. And I would start de-leafing from the bottom up. So by the time I was done, my tomatoes were about a year old and they were 75 feet long. That main branch was 75 feet long, no suckers. And then for like at least 70 feet or 65 feet of it, no, probably 70 feet of it, there was nothing. There was not a leaf. There was not a branch anymore because we had already pulled those tomatoes off. And yeah, so when you got up to the last 10 feet, you had branches of tomatoes and then branches of flowers. And then you had some branches with some leaves at the top. And then that was it. They were ugly, 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 but they were very tamed and very pretty, actually, plants. And so that's how I got maximum production. Now you have to bear in mind, I also had them in the greenhouse. It was in a protected environment, so I controlled the water, I controlled the fertilizer, I controlled the temperature, I controlled the humidity, I controlled 100% of their growing conditions, and so I could push those plants that hard. And so when I take those principles, and this is how I coach actually, when I take those principles of what I did, I kind of apply them to what you would do in a backyard or in a backyard scenario. And so that's why I say just take some leaves off and stress it out a little bit. Take your suckers so you don't have this big bushy, vegetative plant, and then you're going to get some good tomatoes off of it. Later in the season, this is one more little tip and trick for you. Later in the season, when you get about 6 weeks out from the end of your season or the end of when you're going to have a frost, you think, or when you're done with the tomatoes, what you do is you pinch out your grow points. So like the top of the plant or any little shoots that you maybe miss, pinch them all out. And what that's going to do is it's going to put everything and de-leaf a bit as well. And it's going to put all its energy into, oh, I'm dying. This isn't good. I have to ripen off and grow what I have on me already, the tomatoes I currently have on me, pretending I'm a tomato here. And so it'll put everything into the fruit that you already have, and you'll get more red tomatoes.
Good tips. I
Do
have
you have any
been
other
taking
questions?
off the suckers. My other question is about pests. Now, I don't have a cat, so I find cats and animals like pets are a really good way to deter pests, such as rabbits or
Mhm.
squirrels and things like that. But for somebody who doesn't have a pet, what do you suggest they do about things like rabbits that are eating the things in your garden?
Yes. So I guess it all depends on where you fall, and if you live in the city versus if you live in the country. So here I am. I'm a farm girl. Honestly, if you're out in the country, get a gun, do some target practice. That sounds awful, but that's what I would do. I don't actually own a gun, but I would maybe get someone in for target practice. But that's a country solution. Now in the city, you can get traps. You can get cat traps, and you can get, you could trap these animals, and then for a cat you could bring it to the shelter or things like that. I've heard cayenne pepper works. Yeah, if you had a puppy in your backyard or a dog in your backyard, they'd wear it off like pretty quick. Yeah, so that would be one solution.
Okay, so my
Yeah,
next
it's tough.
question about the
Okay.
traps, because I did buy a trap and I put in a few
Okay.
sliced carrots. But I did see the rabbit in the garden and he didn't go for the carrots. So what would be your recommendation for the best bait to put in the trap for rabbits?
I don't know actually. So you put some carrots in and he didn't go for it. Where did you place the trap? Because a rabbit isn't necessarily going to go like, you know how if you have an open yard and then you have your garden around the outside, if you put it in the middle, it's not necessarily going to go there. You have to kind of put it in a path or in the way it goes. So where did you place it?
I placed it in one of the paths in the garden, like where I would walk.
Okay, and where the rabbit likely would walk.
Yeah, I'm thinking to try hay as bait. What do you think of that?
Yeah. Well, I know for my farm animals, they would rather the green grass than the hay. So, for a mouse, I would do peanut butter. A squirrel, I would do peanut butter. A rabbit, I don't know.
Okay, maybe I'll try some apples.
So apples, yeah, maybe something a bit sweeter. Maybe carrots are not as sweet. Maybe carrots aren't as yeah. Try some apples. I would do that. Yeah. I don't know. It's tough, right? Yeah. So you've got a trap.
Yes.
What are you gonna do with your rabbit when you catch it?
Well, there's a few big parks around. So we have High Park, and I hear a lot of people trap raccoons, take them to High Park. And I also hear there's a lot of coyotes in High Park. So they pretty much become food for the coyotes if they're not able to get away. So I'll drive them either to High Park or somewhere far away.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Yeah. Nature, right? Like nature's not always nice either. The coyotes are going to eat the rabbit and that's normal, but yeah, it's just the way it is. Nature's not kind about it. A gun would be better than a coyote, I think. If I had to choose a way to go, I'd rather go by gun than a coyote. I think that's a little morbid thought, but it's what popped in my head right now. Yeah. Do you have any more gardening questions?
I do. So I know it's really important to feed your plants, as I've heard in a lot of your other podcasts. Now, I'll tell you what I've been feeding my plants. So this year we actually had some compost because we've been, composting for the last 2 years. And finally, I was able to use that in the garden. So I started off with that. And then I've been maintaining, feeding my plants with hen manure that I just buy in like a cardboard box, and it comes in pellets, and some blood. What do you call that? It's basically blood.
Blood meal?
Blood meal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
those
for
are the
sure.
two things I'm using, probably every 2 to 3 weeks intermittently, like between one and then the other. So is
Okay.
there like a type of food that you recommend as being like the number one, your favorite type of thing to feed your plants?
Well, to be brutally honest with you, I use 20-20-20 fertilizer. That's what I use. But that's not necessarily the most natural, and I don't know what it really does to the soil. But that's what I've done. Um, but I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, that's the best way. I think what you're doing is fantastic. What I tell clients is you just have to do something like just give them something. And I would give them something every week, not every 2 to 3 weeks, if I can just say that. Because, we eat food every day. So your plants are going to need to eat food. Now, having said that, because you've already put compost in your soil would already be built up. I just had an idea for you too. So I was speaking to someone the other day, and she was saying that she made bunny poop tea. And so you have a rabbit problem. Do you have rabbit poop in your yard?
I have not looked closely enough to see if I do. So what is
Okay,
your
but
suggestion, Don? Do you suggest I pick up little pellets of rabbit poop and make a tea?
yes, absolutely. So it's not as harsh, and so it doesn't have to be composted down quite as much. And so yeah, if you find little pellets, dry them out and store them in your cupboard. They might dry them out real good so they don't stink. Manure that's been dried out doesn't stink, but wet manure does stink. And so put a couple of pellets in a jug of water and then feed that to your plants. And so yeah, she just dissolved poop in water and then fed it to the plants. And she said someone was selling it as well, which I thought was brilliant. And so, yeah, like just using what you have on hand. And then normally you want to take manure, like chicken manure for sure. You want that to be composted for at least a year or two and broken down, because if it's not composted down, it's too hot. Chickens actually poop and pee all in the same little whatever it is. And so, yeah, it can be too hot is what we call it, when it's just too much. And so if you're going to do chicken manure, you want it broken down and composted down. But yeah, bunny pellets don't need to be broken down quite as much. And so you can put that in. Or I've heard of worm tea as well, where you put some worm castings. You can get some worm castings and put it in a tea. So those are very natural options to feed the plants. And I also heard, oh, where was it? Oh, I was listening to a Joel Salatin podcast. This is kind of gross to me, but it just shows it's nature. It's just nature, but I can't get past the mental block of it. But he was saying that in China, they used to have, next to the farms, they used to have these like outhouses or these like latrines. And the people would be like, come to mine, come use mine. Because then you would stop and you'd stop on the side of the road, use their bathroom. And they would use that on their gardens. And so that to me is a little like, I can't stomach that, but I can handle bunny poop better. Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of a community where I lived in Costa Rica. So we would have these outhouses, and they asked you not to go pee, but only poop in the buckets. So you would put sawdust in between the poop. So you'd go poop, throw some sawdust on, and repeat. So once the buckets were full, we put them into like a bigger bin to let it decompose more. And they actually use that on their plants. So it is something people do, like even here, well, Costa Rica, that's where it was. So
For sure. It does make sense. Like, it is usable organic material, and I find that very fascinating that you only pooped and not peed. But it makes sense, right? It's the same reason that chicken manure is too hot, is because the urine is hotter. That's where, I forget what's in urine, but it makes it too hot, too spicy. Urine is too spicy. And so whereas the poop or the manure, that just will compost down and make great compost. Now, the thing with compost, I learned this. So I worked at Bluegrass Nursery in Red Deer this spring, and with their compost, she was telling me that with compost, you have to have it broken down. And so if you've got lumps of poop in there, that's not broken down hard enough. And so you got to let it break down even more. And she also said that compost should not ever stink. And so if you're lifting up your compost and you're smelling it, do the sniff test. And if it stinks, yeah, let it break down even more. And then with compost as well, sometimes like on the farm, you would get a load of manure. And so my first question always is, was it broken down? You can have a manure pile, like from cows or whatever, sheep, goats, whatever. You can have a huge manure pile. But if that pile hasn't been turned and the oxygen gotten to it, so same thing in your backyard compost. If you haven't turned your compost pile, you're not getting the oxygen to it. And so it's not breaking down properly. And so everything that's stuck underneath is not actually composted. It's kind of fermenting, but it's not composted. And so that's why you have to turn your compost to get the oxygen to it. And then eventually it will turn into black soil. Did you know that?
haven't been doing that. I feel like I knew that though. I just haven't been doing it. I did do my permaculture design course on Orcas Island many years back, and they were teaching us how to make compost like quickly. So what we did is we layered green things like green leaves, whatever plant matter that we had, and then on top we would put cardboard boxes. So you can actually compost cardboard boxes. So the point is there's nitrogen and then carbon, nitrogen, carbon. So you're like layering the two and then putting water over it. And I believe they put like some sticks in it to make sure oxygen got inside.
That makes sense to me. That makes 100% sense to me, because you need both. You need all of it. And yeah, I heard something interesting yesterday. I think it was on the radio. I don't remember, in a podcast. I don't remember where I heard this yesterday, but whoever it was saying that our plants in agriculture right now, and I'm a proponent of agriculture of all sizes, so I'm not knocking agriculture at all, but a lot of times it's on like a little TikTok video. they only add nitrogen and phosphorus, and I can't remember. I'm not the science person when it comes to fertilizer. I'm more of the farmer. But I can read my plants, but I don't know all the ins and outs of like I can't tell you what it is on the timetable or the whatever table. But anyways, he was saying that farmers right now are adding a lot of like nitrogen and phosphorus and all the main ingredients to fertilizer. But what's been depleting is not the main things, it's the micronutrients. So your iron and your copper and your small micronutrients. And so that's what's missing out of our food system in some ways, is those micronutrients. But when I was thinking of that as well, I was thinking when I had my farm, I would add in all those micronutrients to my fertilizer mix. And so people would always be like, "Oh, it's hydroponic." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's almost better and perfect in some ways, because I added the nitrogen and I added like all the calcium and all of the main things, but I also did have like a little bit of copper by the teaspoon, a little bit of iron by the teaspoon. Like my micronutrients were down to the gram as to what I put in my fertilizer mix. And so my vegetables had all those micronutrients. I just found that really interesting.
Yeah, I do put cardboard in my compost when I feel like it's like has way too much plant matter, then I'll put some cardboard in. So that's something I learned in my permaculture design course. So
For
not really
sure. I
sure what
love
I
it.
would add to enhance the copper, but I guess you could
Copper
probably
pipe.
buy it at
I don't know. I actually don't know a lot about compost. I really honestly don't. I had a massive compost pile, but I never really did anything with it. It was like 20 years worth of plant material just put up on a big pile at my farm. But I do know, like, so you think you should turn it? Your compost pile?
I probably should. I put some dirt on top of it to sort of like seal what's in there in so that it can do its thing, but I don't know. Do you think I should turn it?
I would turn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would get in there and fork it up and turn it up and stir it up, and then yeah, do it a couple times if you can, and then like once it freezes in, you probably can't do it, but like yeah, if you can turn it at least once over before winter, that's what I would do, because it'll get that bottom stuff up to the top again, because the top stuff will compost down, but your bottom stuff will be not composted. That's my guess. That's my educated guess.
Yes, I do have another question. So it's pretty specific. What are the top 5 plants you would suggest growing in a shaded area? I can probably guess about 2 or 3 of them. But for
Okay.
somebody who has like, a shady backyard, what do you suggest are the 5 top plants you would do?
Great question. What's your guesses?
Based on what I've heard you speak about in the past, I'm guessing you would say lettuce for sure as the number one.
Check mark.
Arugula.
Check mark.
That's all I can think of. I don't know
That's
what else.
okay.
I
Chard.
chard, yeah.
Yeah. Kale. Yeah, kale's a great crop. And kale is a great crop because it will grow longer in the season too. So kale can handle a fair ton of frost as well. And so yeah, if you plant your kale and you just pick it off leaf by leaf by leaf, kale will last you right through into like probably -4 or -5. So it's a really good crop that way. Peas are a cold weather crop, and so they do still need, I mean, everything still needs sunshine to some degree, but you told me earlier that you have about 5 hours of sunshine.
And the most sunny spots. Yes, I've watched the sun and I figured it's about 5, maybe 5.5 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. So even still, that's not a lot of sunshine. So that's where, I mean, you can try your beans and your tomatoes and things like that. But yeah, as far as your shadiest spots, that's where I would put those leafy greens, is the ones that get the least amount of sunshine. They're just going to grow a little bit slower. Now, lettuce, you can do head lettuce, which you would grow up and then you would cut it off and then you would have more subsequent, what's the word? I always forget this word. Subsequent planting, rotational planting.
Succession?
Succession planting. See, you're smarter than I am. Succession planting. So you can succession plant your lettuce, and you can succession plant your spinach. Now, if it's planted in the full shade, it's going to go a little slower, but you can still have succession plantings. And then kale and chard are a one-time plant, and so that's where you would pick just the leaves off. And so you can have kale and chard all summer. That's a one crop stop. And then peas, yeah, peas are a one crop. But if you could do an earlier planting and then a later planting. Peas you can plant really, really early. I know farmers, actually pea farmers, and not peas as in the field crop for feed or for like large scale, but peas. I know a pea farmer who does shelling peas. She does shelling peas in her field, acres and hundreds of acres of them. She starts planting in April already. And so those peas will come up and they'll get a shot of snow or they'll get a shot of frost, but they can handle it a bit. And so peas are very, very cold weather crops. So you could do an early crop and a later crop of peas. Your brassicas might work in the shadier, sunnier, shadier spots in your backyard as well. So broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts can handle -8. Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage is another brassica. And so, well, your arugula is a brassica as well, but it's just it's more of a leafier one instead of a headed crop. And so those would go really well in your backyard as well. You just have to watch for the cabbage moth, which is that little white horrendous butterfly that they're not pretty. They're not cute. They're awful nemesis. Those because they do those green worms and then you're full of worms in your cabbage. Have you done those crops?
No, I have done cabbage like in my mom when I used to live at my mom's house. I did cabbage and I made sauerkraut for my first time with it because I didn't really like eating cabbage as a vegetable, so I found that to be a really good option of a way to use it. So, but here in this garden, I haven't tried any of those.
No. Did you have butterflies or worms in your cabbage?
No, not at all.
Okay, that's lucky. Lucky ducky. Yeah. Those are the trickiest plants to grow. So when I had my farm, I sprayed an organic spray. So it was a bacteria. So it was a spray and you sprayed it on, it was bacteria and the cabbage worm would eat the bacteria and then rot and die. But I had to spray more often because it was organic and so rain would wash it off. And so every time it rained, we sprayed for the cabbage moth. Yeah, no, it's interesting and fascinating. So did you know that just because something's organic doesn't mean it's not been sprayed?
Yes, I feel like I did know that. But at least it's something natural somewhat. Correct?
For sure, absolutely. If it's an organic spray, it's on there because it is natural, and so yeah, there isn't the side effects. And so the spray I used on the for the worms was bacteria, right? And then there were some other ones once in a while I hated spraying ever, but there was sometimes some other ones I used in the greenhouse which were more minerals and things like that. But yeah, I hated spraying. I didn't like spraying at all, but sometimes you had to do what you had to do to keep the crop, and it was organic. It was always on the certified organic list when I had the farm. On a small scale though, if you don't want to spray your cabbage, you can do the netting. And so you can take your netting, your butterfly netting, and put it all the way around and put it all the way down. And you want to make sure you have no holes to peek in. And so bury it under the soil all the way around, transplant out, and then yeah. And you kind of want to keep it like that until you pick it.
Sounds like a lot of work. I'd rather just buy a head of cabbage for $4 at the farmer's market.
And that is something to be said, right? And that's where people can make their choices for sure. I am all about freedom of choice in everything. And yeah, For sure. It is a lot of work. And people don't realize that, growing a garden or growing or farming or homesteading or all these things, that is a bit of a myth, is that, it looks all pretty on Pinterest, but it's a lot of work and a lot of detail and a lot of, fine tuning. And you're going to put in late nights and early mornings. And that's what people don't realize, I think. And so you're right. It is easy to sometimes go to the farmer's market, and that's a better choice, going directly to a farmer's market, as long as you're getting from the farmers. Sometimes at farmers markets, there's tricky people who like to buy and sell, and you're getting the same stuff as a grocery store. You have to be smart when you go to a farmer's market and make sure they actually have a farm. But yeah, sometimes it's easier to just get it from a farmer's market. What I used to say to customers, because I grew a lot of cucumbers, tomatoes, and peppers, which were trickier things to grow. Tomatoes, not so much, but peppers and cucumbers for sure. And so I would say to customers, go grow your garden. Grow some lettuce and grow some peas and grow some carrots and some potatoes and do the easy things. And then let me do the hard things like peppers. Peppers are such a long crop. Don't even try a pepper unless you live, south of Canada. Peppers are such a long crop. You might not get that many.
Hot
And so
peppers are pretty good because they grow pretty small anyways. And anytime I've tried sweet pepper, they don't get very big. And it's just, what was even the point?
Hey friends, on Dawn's Dirt, we get real about growing food, farming, homesteading, living free, and digging into the stuff that actually matters. If you're loving the dirt we're dishing out, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on your favorite social media platforms. That's how we keep growing this community of badass, soil-covered, chicken-loving, freedom-chasing humans. Like and subscribe to me on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Come be part of the movement. Exactly. So hot peppers do grow quicker, and so you can get some production out of them. That would be the exception. But bell peppers, I grew bell peppers in the greenhouse, and they were seeded in November, and then I got them in January, and I didn't see a colored pepper until April. So it took 5 months to go from seed to one pepper coming off the plant. And so when we think of our short seasons, especially here in Canada, like, who has 5 months? We're lucky to get 2 months frost free in some parts of Canada, right? So yeah, peppers are not the wisest decision in your home garden, especially here in Canada. You can try it, like bell peppers, sweet bell peppers, but the hot peppers, yeah, do it. And the other thing I've suggested to clients as well is, if you take your pepper plant, so even a bell pepper, or a hot pepper, if you take your pepper plant and put it in a big pot, give it some fertilizer, nutrients, or compost. Like, make sure you feed it your bunny poop tea. Feed it nutrients. But if you put it in a big pot, that pot can be transferred into your home, into a sunny window, and it can continue growing, because peppers are such a slow growing plant. They're not going to get crazy, crazy, crazy big like a tomato does. And so you can use it almost like a perennial, in that you take it inside and outside. And so, but aphids really like peppers, so you got to watch for that.
Nice. Yeah. Another really good tip my friend gave me, she said, she suggested, if you have a small area to garden, you may as well grow things that cost more in the grocery store. For example, tomatoes, they cost more in the grocery store than a bag of potatoes. You can get a bag of potatoes sometimes. I've seen them at No Frills for like a 10-pound bag for $2 when they're on sale. So even though it's like satisfying and a lot healthier because you know what's going into your potatoes, sometimes it's probably better just to grow something else, and something that's going to cost you more at the grocery store.
Smart. That's totally, totally smart. Yeah, tomatoes would be a great one. Greens would be a great one too, because those baby greens in the grocery store are actually quite expensive, and they're so easy to grow at home. So greens and tomatoes for sure, and they're easy plants to grow.
Yeah,
Definitely. Absolutely. Great tips and tricks.
The other thing I wanted to share is 2 years ago, I invested in a grow tent. So I grow all of my seedlings in my grow tent starting in probably a month before I can put them out. So in April. And that saves me a lot of money on seedlings, because when you buy your seedlings from one of these nurseries, you can spend like Easily. I spent $40 on just a few tomato plants and, a few hot pepper plants. So I think that's a really good thing to think about for people who want to start their own garden is make that initial investment and you can start your own seedlings. Like it's really not that hard. You get your grow lights, you get your temperature control, like a fan in there, and you're good to go.
Absolutely. Preach it. Preach it. That's amazing. And then do you have an idea of what you're going to do with your grow tent in the winter?
It breaks down. So I actually just broke it down a few weeks ago. I did a second succession of seedlings. So, in June, I started some more seedlings so that I had some things to plant in July to replace the things that were coming out. So I just pack it up. It breaks down nice and small and put it in storage.
I have another idea for you.
What's that?
So in the wintertime, if you've got your grow tent and you've got the lights and all you got to do is get some soil and some seeds. And I'm going to do a microgreens course this fall. And so you could grow your own microgreens all winter and have greens in your salads and your smoothies and your whatever toppers for your whatever pea shoots. You can saute them and put them in your stir fries and you could have microgreens all winter. So I wouldn't pack that bad boy away. I would look into microgreens.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. I can bring it back out, once the garden's finished and all that. So
yeah, I love it. I love it. Watch Dawn's Dirt because we're gonna do a full microgreens course this probably starting in after Thanksgiving, Canadian Thanksgiving. We'll probably start that one.
I listen to your podcast all the time. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So thanks so much for being on the show today. And you do crocheting. I just want to end off with hearing about your little business. Do you want to put a little shout out for your business on there?
Sure. So I'm a crochet artist, designer. I have a website, crochetculture.ca, and my Instagram is Rebecca's Crochet Culture. So that's one of my other passions. I teach classes. I made the earrings I'm wearing right now. And yes, it's another way to be self-sufficient, making your own clothes, your own hats for the winter. So it's a great skill.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And it's a little business. So I heard a quote the other day and or a couple months back, actually, Dakota Cohen. He said, everyone should be a producer. Not everyone should be a farmer. And so with you and your crocheting, you're a producer. And so you are creating something usable to be able to barter or trade or sell or whatever. And so I love that you're in business and I love that you're an entrepreneur and we need more people like you growing gardens and doing small side businesses on the side. So thanks so much for joining me today. Really, really appreciate your time and what a great episode. So thank you.
Thank you, Dawn, and good luck catching those chickens.